The newsday continues here on One News Now. I'm Riza Diaz. As LGU scrambled to hand out cash aids, authorities now have to worry about ayuda fixers. Local officials in Las Piñas are now probing the alleged selling of ayuda control numbers by no less than a barangay watchman. JC Cosico has the story.
Residents of Barangay CAA in Las Piñas City had to endure the summer heat just to claim their ECQ ayuda. 58-year-old Rosario Cruz has been waiting for more than 5 hours. She arrived around 6 a.m. at the Timog Covered Court.
Masyado po mainit. Tayo po kami, pila, pawis, gutom.
It also took Margarita Kitaro hours to claim her cash aid at the Nara Covered Court Payout Center. She said she will be using the cash aid for her business.
Malit na tindahan, idagdag ko po kaysa mangutang.
Beneficiaries were given control numbers to limit the people lining up in payout centers. Barangay officials say only around 500 persons can be accommodated daily, but only a handful of cashiers handle the payout, resulting in long waiting hours.
Kunyari bukas ang schedule na ngayon, binibigay na namin yung number nila. Naka-color code po yun para itong kulay na to para sa araw na to.
Some residents would also take their chances despite the curfew.
Sadyang matigas ulo ng iba, nagbabakasakali, minsan pipila ng alas 2, alas 3, madaling araw, meron tayong curfew, kaya binubugaw namin sila.
That's why local officials are also investigating the alleged sale of control numbers involving a barangay tanod. This would supposedly fast-track paying residents claiming of the ayuda.
Sinong makapag-pinpoint na nabentahan siya ng ticket? Yung araw na yun, tatanggalin namin yung nabentahan ng ticket na tanod. Tanod na binabanggit eh.
Las Piñas City received 501 million pesos for the ECQ ayuda. About 76,000 of the city's over 124,000 family beneficiaries have so far received their cash assistance. The Las Piñas CSWD targets to finish the distribution by April 20.
Pipilitin namin. Kung hindi naman siguro, baka makihingi kami ng extension if in case.
The Las Piñas CSWD says grievance committees were set up in barangays to address financial aid-related concerns. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
Now here are other stories we're following across the nation. In Ilocos region, police are implementing stricter quarantine protocols amid an increase in COVID-19 cases. According to PNP Region 1, visitors in Pangasinan must present proof of essential travel along with identification cards at border checkpoints. In La Union, which is under MECQ until April 23, all travelers, including those only passing through, need to present a negative RT-PCR test result, ID, and QR pass. Ilocos Sur remains under MGCQ, but the cities of Vigan and Candon and some towns are still under MECQ. Now, meanwhile, returning residents in Ilocos Norte must present a negative swab result within 4 days upon their return. Travel for leisure is also not allowed. Baguio City once again reopens to tourists, but only from areas under general community quarantine and MGCQ. Mayor Benjamin Magalong asked the Tourism Department to allow the city to reopen to tourists. In a Facebook post, the City Tourism Office said travelers are required to sign up at vista.gov.ph to generate a QR code tourist pass. A negative swab test taken 72 hours prior to the visit or an antigen test upon arrival is required aside from mandatory triage. Only 3,000 tourists per day will be allowed to enter Baguio City. The local government of Quezon City now offers free swab testing through online appointments. According to Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte, the online appointment system was established to support contact tracing initiatives. Local health authorities say that the system can only accommodate up to 100 reservations a day. Residents who will be prioritized are close contacts, those experiencing symptoms, pregnant women, dialysis patients, and those who will undergo medical operations and need COVID-19 results. Now, after submitting the form, a representative will reach out to verify details and assess the person's condition. A confirmation text will also be sent to notify the resident of their schedule. Local health officials stress that no walk-ins for swab tests shall be allowed. The opening of 2 new stations of the LRT Line 2 has been deferred by 2 months. The Marikina and Antipolo stations of LRT 2, which were supposed to be inaugurated on April 26, will open on June 23 instead. The Transportation Department said a trial run will be conducted for the new stations on the 26th. Now, aside from the high number of cases among LRT2 personnel and the MECQ status in Metro Manila, the foreigners tasked to conduct the final stages of the project were not allowed to enter the Philippines due to travel restrictions. The Health Department attributes the artificial decrease in new COVID-19 cases to various factors. Speaking to One News Now, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergeres said that there are a lot of factors considered by the agency when looking at the reported cases in their bulletins. Among these reasons is the closed COVID-19 laboratories during the weekend.
Over the weekend, some of our laboratories would be non-operational. They would not be continuing opening up for operations because of disinfection in their laboratories, or maybe sometimes there would be a day off for our specific healthcare workers or the healthcare workers indisposed. So because of this, when you look at our case numbers from Monday to Wednesday, usually the case numbers are low, but these are just artificial.
One Sambayan convener, Antonio Carpio, is calling on the U.S. and other countries to help in preventing China from enforcing the 9-dash line. And despite recent hostile incidents in the West Philippine Sea, the retired associate justice says the Philippines can maintain its economic relations with China while still protecting its sovereign rights. Let's hear more from the retired magistrate from this Bloomberg report.
Well, this is part of the strategy of China to take possession of the maritime zones in the West Philippine Sea and all over the South China Sea within the 9-dash line. So their massive presence in Julian Felipe Reef and in other areas is a prelude to their building in the future military installations in these selected areas. In the case of Julian Felipe Reef, it's very close to Mischief Reef, which is their biggest air and naval base in the Spratlys. So it's only 50 nautical miles from Mischief Reef. So they need to put up a military installation on Julian Felipe Reef to protect their air and naval base in the Mischief Reef.
How far is the Philippines prepared to go to defend its sovereignty?
We will defend our sovereignty and sovereign rights to the extent that we can in accordance with international law and our treaty alliances. We have a treaty with the U.S., Mutual Defense Treaty, and we will invoke that treaty when the time arises, when the need arises.
But how do you balance this geopolitical rivalry, if you will, or this border sovereignty issue with the fact that the Philippines has also got so much closer to China, economically speaking?
Yes, but in the case of Vietnam and Indonesia and even Malaysia, they're very protective of their sovereignty and sovereign rights, but they continue with their economic and trade relations with China. So we can do the same.
There is a fine line, though, that you can't actually go across, though. What is that before, of course, you start to feel the ill economic effects from this, a disruption like this?
Well, we will cross the bridge when we come to it, but in the case of Vietnam, they have been very aggressive in defending their sovereignty and sovereign rights, but they continue to, China remains their biggest trading partner. And also with Malaysia. Because of the arbitral ruling, the U.S. and its allies, UK, France, Japan, Canada and Australia are conducting freedom of navigation operations in the West Philippine Sea. When they go to the West Philippine Sea and conduct naval drills, they tell China, we can do this because in the West Philippine Sea, this is an exclusive economic zone of a coastal state, the Philippines. And under the arbitral ruling, this is the EEZ of the Philippines. And under international law, in the EEZ, we can conduct naval drills because there's freedom of navigation, which includes naval drills. So in effect, the freedom of navigation operations of the U.S. and its allies actually enforce the ruling. It's the strongest enforcement of the ruling, and they do this every 45 days. And because of that, China cannot take possession of the EEZ of the Philippines.
There have been some floundering attempts at working together with these other countries who were given this arbitral award. How can you make a more concrete and more concerted effort to leverage pressure on China?
Well, unfortunately, our president is not doing that, but we are waiting for the next administration. We can easily first join the freedom of navigation operations of the U.S. Second, conduct joint patrols with the U.S. in the West Philippine Sea. Third, conduct joint patrols with Malaysia and Vietnam on each other's EEZ so that we'll be telling China, the three countries, Vietnam, Malaysia, and the Philippines, will be telling China, we have our own EEZ in the South China Sea, and your 9-line cannot take that away from us. But we will do that in the next administration after May 2022. The Biden administration has the same position of the Trump administration on the South China Sea. It's a bipartisan issue in the United States, so there is no substantive change. They will oppose the 9-line because that is in derogation of the law of the sea, and that is where our interests merge. There is a convergence of interest between the Philippines and the U.S. because the U.S. is stopping China from using the 9-line to control the South China Sea, and we have the same interest. The U.S. should be frank about it because when the U.S. was the colonial power in the Philippines, they came up with an official map showing that Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory. They can say that now, that Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory, and therefore it's covered by the Mutual Defense Treaty. It's the same thing the U.S. did to the Senkakus. The U.S. said the Senkakus are part of territory under the administration of Japan, and that the Senkakus are covered by the Mutual Defense Treaty between the U.S. and Japan. The U.S. can do the same with respect to Scarborough Shoal, and that puts China on notice that if China builds on Scarborough Shoal, then we can invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty.
And those are the top stories of the hour. Join us later at 12 noon as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Riza Diaz. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.